and I'm so glad to see all of our elected officials. I had the privilege to meet many earlier, and I just have to say, you've got some phenomenal women and some phenomenal men also who are elected here. And it's been such an honor to be here just for this short period of time, you know, because Kimberly Ellis, you know Kimberly, my good friend and supporter.
Yes,
She's been, and Tiffany, and so many people have been telling me, you've got to get up here to Nevada County. You've got to get there. And I have to just give them a round of applause because they made sure that this happened. And I will be back because just the spirit here has touched me already, and I'd love to spend a few days here, so I gotta get back. You're here also where a change is happening, and so I am really inspired by your power and your activism, and I'm very inspired and excited how you're turning what was once a red area into a blue Democratic county. I want to just highlight a couple of things I read about this county and you specifically in terms of your values of social, economic, and environmental justice. Because these are my values also. And these are fights that I've been mounting as an elected official, and even before I was elected. And also they're pretty personal to me. So let me just give you a little bit of history about myself. I grew up in an immigrant community in El Paso, Texas. And where we lived, there was an area called Smelter Town because it was so close to a lead and copper smelter. Black and brown immigrant community. My mother developed COPD. My grandfather developed major lung problems. My sister developed MS. There was so much, so many health impacts that everyone in our neighborhoods had as a result of this smelter, which was emitting toxic lead and other pollutants. So I know what environmental injustice feels like, and I know why I fight for environmental justice each and every day, because it's in my DNA. I was raised to be an environmentalist. Woo! Raised to be an environmentalist. I just happened to be one of the few African American, well, El Paso was still very, you know, the black community in El Paso right now is 3%. It was 2% when we were growing up there, but I was one of the few brownies and Girl Scouts in El Paso, African American. But I was taught to value and to love our earth. By being a Girl Scout, I was out in the environment constantly, in nature. And so I put that together with this terrible poison that we had to breathe. And so as a child, I said, well, I've got to do something, not quite understanding what this meant, because I was black and brown kids and black kids were having to deal with all of this. So that's why now I'm fighting, and I was one of the original co-sponsors of the Green New Deal. And also we've introduced with Congressman Raul Grijalva, who is our ranking member now of the Interior Committee, the Donald A. McEachin, who is a great African-American environmentalist, the Donald A. McEachin Environmental Justice for All Act, to give the federal government the ability to stop these toxic projects that pose a risk to the environment. We are going to do that. And yes, we have got to wean ourselves from fossil fuels. I signed early on no fossil fuels in terms of campaign contributions. I don't take corporate campaign contributions. No fossil fuels. Years ago, not just recently. And now, let me tell you a little bit more about me. I had to rely on public assistance while raising my two little boys. I had to bring my kids to class with me. I went to Mills College. I did my undergrad work there. And then UC Berkeley. I worked on my MSW clinical social worker by profession, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But while I was earning my degrees, I could not afford childcare. The wait list based on a sliding fee schedule was so long that they didn't get to my name until I was about to graduate from graduate school. Can you believe that? And now families can't afford childcare still. This is a shame and disgrace. And that it is, because part of the affordability crisis here in California is what? Housing and childcare. Housing and childcare. So I know what economic injustice feels like. I've lived that. And that's why I'm fighting so hard for legislation like the Oligarch Act, which I proposed with Senator Bernie Sanders to tax extreme wealth. And I'm so proud that our revolution has endorsed me, and we're working hard to win this campaign with our revolution, just so you know. But this Oligarch Act is there, and we introduced it to tax extreme wealth, to reduce inequality, and to combat the threat to democracy posed by aristocracy. The cost of living, combined with inflation here in California, forces people, to commute 2 and 3 hours a day to and from work. Some are leaving the state. Child care, as I said earlier, and housing costs are drivers that keep California, ordinary working families, keeps a pathway into the middle class really out of reach. So we have got to grow the middle class. We have got to, because we have some of the highest child poverty rates here in California in the entire country. A lot of people don't know that, but California, unfortunately, children go hungry at night. In my congressional district in Oakland and Berkeley, now, and I'm citing these statistics because it's real, and I want to paint this picture of why I'm running for the Senate and why my voice and perspective is extremely important, because you don't hear a lot of members of the Senate fighting for so many people who aren't seen in this state. Approximately 40 million people in California, in the Golden State of California, 20 million people, one paycheck away from poverty. People are struggling here. In my district, $115,000 for a family of 4 constitutes low income and poverty, living in poverty, okay? $115,000. And so we have got to understand that the cost of living and what is taking place here in California are forcing the most vulnerable people out on the streets. So housing and affordable housing, and making sure that our unsheltered population are taken care of, but also prevent evictions and prevent them from having to live on the streets is extremely important to me. So we've got to do that. And part of what we're dealing with here in California, part of it is due to corporate greed. A lot of corporate greed here. It's a moral disgrace. Now, I've felt also the sting of discrimination and being told that I couldn't be a cheerleader in high school because of the color of my skin. Let me tell you what happened so you understand what I'm talking about. When we moved from Texas to Southern California, my dad, incidentally, was a 25-year proud military officer. So I salute all of our veterans today, because my dad was Colonel Darvin A. Tuck. I want to thank our veterans. I do a lot on Veterans Affairs. We're building now in my district a veterans clinic and veteran services, which we need to invest more in. But my dad decided he was going to be a military man. And he served in World War I, and he was in the 92nd All-Black Battalion in Italy, supporting the Normandy invasion, fought in Korea. He was in Japan, 25 years. He could not buy a house in San Leandro, California, because he was black. He told my mother he was gonna put his uniform on. And my mother said, okay, you're still black. Watch. He went out there, he was run out of town. And do you know, today I represent San Leandro. I just share that story because, as Dr. King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice, and that's what you all are doing, is bending this arc toward justice. So when we moved to California, Southern California, in San Fernando and Pacoima, I wanted to be a cheerleader. And there was selection criteria to be a cheerleader. And I didn't look like the type of girl that could get through this election, the selection criteria, because of what I looked like. I was black. So I went to the NAACP, and I knew the NAACP because my mother was in El Paso, was one of the first 12 students to be a plaintiff in the lawsuit that the NAACP put forward to integrate the University of Texas at El Paso. She was one of the first 12. My grandfather, first black letter carrier in El Paso, spoke fluent Spanish. Just a little bit about my history, personal history. So I went to the NAACP because I knew who they were, and I said, I need help. I want to be a cheerleader, but they won't let me because I can't even get in the door. So they looked at it, the NAACP looked at what was taking place, and they said, yeah, you're right. So they helped me organize. They helped me organize the student body. There was a lot of pushback, and the administration, a lot of pushback. But we forced them to change that selection process to an election. And so I tried out, turned my cartwheels in front of the student body, and guess what? I won. I was the first black cheerleader. I share that story. That was my first election, and I was 15 years old. My first election, I won. I intend to win this one, too. But that opened the door for other black and brown girls to be elected cheerleader. That's the point. And that's why I have constantly worked as an elected official to break down barriers, to fight for everyone, especially those who don't have a seat at the table. I don't care whether it's the LGBTQ plus community, our immigrant community, black people, brown people, people who are poor, rural people, people who live in conditions on the street that are immoral. I'm gonna make sure that whatever barriers are there, where people are shut out, I'm gonna fight for them, and I have been fighting for them, and will continue to do that. That's my job. And so I'm running, yes, for the United States Senate because I think that California needs to have an effective progressive champion who will hit the ground running, a senator with experience in national security, foreign policy, and who also can deliver to make life better for everyone in California, because everyone in California deserves a shot at the American dream. And my history and my ability to negotiate, legislate, and appropriate, I hope you have a chance to look at my record, because I have been able to work with Republicans, if you can believe that. And you know, I voted against the authorization to use force. I was the only one when George Bush. I went to him and I said, you know, people are dying of AIDS, Mr. President. You have got to do something. Bottom line is, I worked with George Bush, Henry Hyde, the late Henry Hyde, those of you who Hyde Amendment. I worked with Senator Frist. I worked with Republicans to write and pass the largest global HIV/AIDS initiative ever, and we have saved 25 million lives. And I share that because it's important for you to know that even as a progressive black woman who's going to fight each and every day against the MAGA extremist Republicans, where I see there's common ground, where I can do something to fight for peace, to fight for economic justice, environmental justice, where I can fight for everyday Californians, I'll work with them. Right now, if you can believe this, Chip Roy, you know who he is, right? Well, I have legislation to repeal the authorizations to use military force. 49 Republicans supported it when I got it out of the House. Went into the Senate picked it up, and we got it through the Senate, but it was at the end of last year and didn't get to the president's desk. But President Biden said he would sign these repeals into law. So I'm working now with the MAGA extremist Republicans. I have quite a few of them who are helping me get this passed again in the House. And that's important for you to know. Very important for you to know, because a lot of people know how much I'm a fighter and pushing back on what Donald Trump has put forth in terms of trying to turn our democracy into an autocracy, and you know what I'm talking about. He's got this new speaker that he has reached into the House of Representatives and trying now to run the House of Representatives and dog it in the ground in terms of what he wants to see. So I know the dangers of this group of people. And so I'm working with them where I find common ground. But with Donald Trump, there is no common ground. None. I filed, and I want you to know this also because it's important. I don't know if the press has covered it, but right after January 6th, I was sitting on the floor of Congress and barely got out. I was right down there. Speaker Pelosi asked, and I'm in leadership to be on the floor. We barely got out. I filed a lawsuit. The NAACP actually is the lawsuit, and I'm the lead plaintiff, holding Donald Trump, the Oath Keepers, and the Proud Boys accountable for what they did. And I want you to know, again, it's not on TV. A lot of what I do, I would do my work a lot. I don't know if you see me on television a lot, but we've gotten through one of the lower courts, first time ever. Donald Trump is now appealing it in the district court, and we're hopeful that we're going to move forward to discovery pretty soon. But just know we did this before the January 6th committee was formed, because we knew what took place and how Donald Trump, the Proud Boys, and the Oath Keepers nearly thwarted the peaceful transfer of power. I saw that. I was there. They almost did that. But we prevailed. Democracy prevailed. But I know how fragile it is. I know how fragile it is. And when you talk about democracy, we're talking about freedoms. We're talking about the corporate corrupt Supreme Court and what it has done based on Donald Trump's appointees to take away our reproductive freedoms, our voting rights. They're trying to roll back all of our environmental rights, our right to organize, you name it. They're trying to take away our freedoms. And so this is part of our fight for our democracy. And I hope that we understand how important, you understand how important your work is, because we know that we cannot have a Donald Trump and the MAGA extremist Republicans in power, because it is truly an injustice. And so we need progressive solutions to our country's problems. And I mean, that's as it relates to our global and foreign policy and national security, as well as our domestic priorities. as a member of the Appropriations Committee. I was saying earlier, when we were in the majority, I was the chair of the subcommittee, the first time an African American had ever chaired this Appropriations Committee that was responsible for all of our development, diplomacy, humanitarian assistance, embassy security, everything that was non-defense related. I believe we need to rebalance our national security strategy. We have three legs: defense, diplomacy, development. Well, my budget, which was $60 billion, defense was $800 billion. Now, what kind of rebalancing is that? And now what we're doing with these MAGA extremists, what they're doing, they've cut that budget down to 2009 levels. So when it comes to foreign policy and making sure that we exercise our global leadership, we have got to deal with this defense budget and the Pentagon spending and the waste, fraud, and abuse.
President.
I don't support this increase in the defense budget.
No.
150 million we have identified, and Bernie has identified, that's waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay? And on top of that, you have the fact that the Pentagon is the only agency that had never been audited. So I teamed up with a Republican.
Which one?
Burgess. A couple of years ago, and wrote the legislation to force the Pentagon to conduct an audit. But this is just recent. But guess what? They have flunked 5 audits already. 5 audits. Actually, Grover Norquist stood with me when I introduced the legislation to do this. They have flunked 5 audits. So why should we keep increasing the defense budget, your tax dollars, when the system is being scammed by military contractors? No way. No way. And so some of you may have seen the 60-minute expose about the weapons arms dealers. Billions of dollars. So in the Appropriations Committee, once again, working with the Republicans, I was able to include this year a requirement that the Pentagon, within 90 days, find out, investigate, and claw back that money quickly, because that was unnecessary. That first they slept on it and did not identify it until 60 Minutes did, and did nothing. Your tax dollars. So they're going to have to pay that money back. And the Pentagon is so I'm sharing a few of these stories so you know that, yes, I'm a progressive African-American woman. I'm a member of the DNC. I've been fighting for years for economic justice, for environmental justice, for our democracy, for social justice. But also, I want you to know that I can deliver from day one. You know, experience matters. And finally, I'll just say this to you, because a lot of people don't realize this until I mention it, and then it shakes them to their core. 1789 is when the first House and Senate went into session. There have been now 3 African-American women serving in the United States Senate for a total of 10 years. Since 1789. Representation matters. Representation matters. Representation matters. And so for me, as I said, many of the issues that I fight for, I've lived these issues. These experiences have made me who I am today and have informed me how I approach the solemn responsibility of being an elected official and hopefully your next United States Senator. This is what democracy looks like. So I just have to ask you, are we going to take back the House?
Yeah.
We're going to elect more Democrats Donald Trump and these maggots? Elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to the White House. And then finally, we're going to turn this district blue for good.